Let's talk Tanya for the 28th of Tamuz of a leap year. In the previous segments of Tanya, we've been talking about Teshuvah and the two steps that are necessary for Teshuvah, and we're talking here about the lower level of Teshuvah, and those are evoking mercy upon our souls, compassion upon our souls, understanding the fact that our souls are stuck in klipa because of what we have done, and realizing the rachmanis it is on our souls. And also the breaking of the ego by contemplating the damage that we've done through the sins that we have done. When a person is in that state, and a person really feels the rachmanis, feels the compassion, and the ego is broken, at that point a person can honestly turn to God and say, God, please, please take away my sins, erase my sins. And because you're in that state where you feel the rachmanis and where your ego is broken, God responds, and you actually evoke God's 13 attributes of mercy. And the 13 attributes of God's mercy, they're even higher than the name of Havaya, and therefore they can fix any of the damage that is done in the name of Havaya, any of the damage that's done in the soul, and that brings about atonement and cleans up all the mess that was done through the sins that a person may have done. This is the lower level of Teshuvah. Teshuvah Tashuv Hey, when we take the lower level of the lower Hey, the second Hey of God's name, which is the source of our souls, and we extract it along with our souls from the clutches of the klipa. And what we are effectively doing through this lower level of Teshuvah, called Teshuvah Tata, is we are transforming ourselves. We are doing a system reset or a system restore. And instead of being Rishoim, wicked people, we are becoming tzaddikim. We are becoming righteous people. And the word Teshuvah means to restore, because when we are born, we are all tzaddikim. When we mess up, we become Rishoim, but through Teshuvah, we revert back to our original state, the state of righteous people, and that is accomplished through the lower level of Teshuvah. However, there's also a higher level of Teshuvah called Teshuvah Ilah, which is also a system restore, but it is a much more impressive one. And that is after a person has become a tzaddik, a person has restored themselves to the state they were in when they were born. Now we need to restore ourselves, our souls, back to the state they were before we were born. Because ultimately, every time that a person is born, God breathes the soul into the body. And when God breathes the soul into the soul becomes an independent entity. As opposed to before God breathed the soul into the body, the soul was part of God. And that is the second thing that we need to do. The higher level of Teshuvah is, if the first level of Teshuvah takes me from a state of Rasha to a state of Tzaddik, this Teshuvah takes me from a state of Yesh to a state of Ayin, a state of independent entity and ego, even if it's a holy one, to a state of Ayin, a state of nothingness. In other words, no personal identity, but rather complete unity with God. How is this accomplished? So as we mentioned, the higher level of Teshuvah involves the first Hey of God's name. The first Hey of God's name is Bina, which is understanding. And that's because the higher level of Teshuvah is accomplished through studying Torah. When we study Torah, we become completely united with God. We are channeling God. God's words are flowing in our mind. God's words are flowing through our mouths and through our lips. That is the ultimate unity, even much more so than mitzvahs. Mitzvah says, I am doing what God wants, but we are two separate entities. He's the one who commanded the mitzvah. I'm the one who's obeying. When I study Torah, there's that absolute unity, and then I'm restoring myself to the way I was even before I was born. That state of absolute unity with God. This higher level of Teshuvah Ilah, which is through studying Torah, how does that impact the rest of my being and the rest of my day when I'm not studying Torah? That will be the topic of tomorrow's Let's Talk Tanya.